This is Irish Folklore Heritage. I'm Stan J. O'Reilly, looking at Wicklow's Viking heritage. The Vikings, or Northmen, were long established as traders by the last decade of the 8th century, when they turned into sea raiders, pillagers and plunderers, raiding monastic settlements and carrying off monks and novices that they had not killed as slaves. The monastic city of Glendalough was one of their targets. But why did they turn to raiding? The simple answer is because they could. The early church loved precious metals, gold and silver, and precious stones for crosses, plates, chalices, and so on. Pilgrims saw these riches, and word was carried back to the Northmen. Gold, silver, and precious stones were their currency and a mark of status in Viking society. A Northman could buy property and livestock with it, and it featured in their jewellery and weapons, and it was there in the monastic settlements and churches for the taking, with little effort and no opposition whatsoever. Wicklow's Viking heritage. The contemporary Irish viewpoint on the Vikings from 841 to 1014 was far from flattering, as one frightened monk wrote, "Fierce is the wind tonight, it ploughs up the white air of the sea. I have no fear that the Viking hosts will come over the water to me." Hit and run raids by the Vikings took place in Ireland from 795 onwards. By 841, two settlements were established at Annagassan and Dublin. From these settlements, of course, other settlements spread out to Wicklow, Arklow, Wexford, Waterford, and many other sites in Ireland. The Vikings or Northmen cemented alliances with native chiefs and intermarried to seal such agreements. They were effective sea raiders, expert sailors, navigators, craftsmen, traders, farmers, and settlers. They lost more battles than they ever won on Irish soil. Why was this? Well, they were outnumbered in effect. If they wanted to settle, they had to get on with the local natives of the East Coast. And this is exactly what they did. They made their settlement of Dublin into a large trading proto-town and slave centre. In just one day, they removed 300 slaves from Dublin. A proto-town was the beginning of what we now know as towns in Ireland. Until the Vikings came, power in Ireland rested on Tara Hill, which was not a town. The Vikings actually brought the concept of early towns to Ireland, and that is where the towns in the country of Ireland came from. Their territorial kingdom on the east coast stretched from Skerries to Arklow. The word Viking was derived from the Old Norse Vikinger, which means sea robber or pirate. A.L. Ba wrote of almost 900 Scandinavian loanwords in the English language, many beginning with SK or SC. Scandinavian loanwords into the Irish language were far fewer. Anchor, bod, scod, stavira, dorga, langa, trusk, and skinning included. Anchor, boat, sheet, rudder, fishing line, ling, cod, and shilling. There are also many place names of Scandinavian origin in England, but again fewer in Ireland. Wicklow is a place name that can be traced back in its origins to the Old Norse loanwords. There's a dispute, however, on the exact meaning of the word Ikingerlo, which can be divided into two component parts. There is no dispute that low translates as meadow or grassland. The dispute centres upon the component Ikinger, which many have translated as meaning Viking. Myself, I tend to agree with the linguist Magnus Oftedal, and he wrote, "The word Ikinger in the sense of Viking can nowhere else be found to have been used as a Scandinavian place name element." Oftedal goes on to state that the Middle English term Wicklow is in fact an error in spelling. And he said, "I prefer to think that Wicklow was Vikinglow and is in fact an error in spelling. Wicklow was Ikerlow, meaning meadow of the bay in translation." My contribution in this context is different to that of Magnus Oftedal or some of the other experts. My contribution in this context is that the Vikings took the old pagan name for the Wicklow area, which was Wick, which meant Bay of the River, and that they added the segment low, meaning meadow, to that, and thus Wicklow was created Bay of the River Meadows, which is pretty close to what Magnus Oftedal had stated and would have been what the Vikings would have seen coming into Wicklow. Other Scandinavian place names include Lambay, Smerwick, Salty, Carlingford, Strangford and Dorsey. As very little physical evidence remains above ground of Wicklow's Viking heritage, and as no archaeological digs have been carried out within the town boundaries, it's always an important occasion when artefacts are unearthed. In the past, 3 Viking Age corn hoards have been unearthed at Glendalough. Female grave goods consisting of a pair of oval brooches and a silver chain at 3 Mile Water were what of Wicklow town. The National Museum of Ireland in 2000 discussed the Viking Age sword remnants which were found on the Murray at Wicklow around 1888, and this was said to be part of a grave. Due to the composition of the soil, the find was in a very distressed condition. However, it was pointed out that the quillion of the sword was richly decorated with gold spiral on a silver plate. The sword therefore belonged to a powerful and influential man, perhaps Wicklow's premier Viking princeling. The site where it was unearthed is lost forever though, and under the sea, but the possibility is that it came from a lone burial plot, or perhaps maybe part of a graveyard area. A coin from the reign of the Scandinavian Irish King Sitrick of Dublin was also unearthed at Dunbar, close to the town. The most up-to-date evidence of Wicklow's Viking heritage was discovered in a back garden at St. Kevin's Terrace some years ago. The importance of the find was not realised until it was examined by the National Museum's Antiquities Division. The find was important in the context with that it was found inside the boundaries of Wicklow town, and it was quickly discounted as a Bronze Age artefact. A Viking Age armlet of this type was described as unique, and is one of just 2 ever found outside of Scandinavia. The other, more richly decorated, was also found in Ireland and is part of the museum's Viking Age collection. Usually, Viking Age armlets are penannular armlets forming a complete ring. These are rare and are only known from Scandinavia. The finder, a young Wicklow town native, was rewarded with a substantial award as his find fell under the classification of treasure trove. According to Chris Corlett of the County Wicklow Archaeological Society, it is possible that the remains of a Viking Age timber fort may yet be unearthed under the mound to the north of St. Thomas's Church of Divine, Churchill, Wicklow. The recent find throws up more questions than it answers. Could it be evidence of settlement? Viking settlers did not live in a single large compound. They tended to branch out and live apart from each other. Is it possible that the find is yet more evidence of a Viking burial, and as such part of grave goods interred with the remains of a deceased Viking warrior? It may well be that the artefact was lost by its owner, or stolen, or even traded. An archaeological dig would prove to be impossible, due to the number of houses on the site, and aerial photography would be hindered by such. We have no idea what lies under our feet as we walk around Wicklow town environs. The Black Castle is built on the site of an original fortification which was constructed by the second wave of Scandinavian invaders, the Danes, who followed the example of the Norse and settled in the Wicklow area. The term black bestowed upon the castle by locals who were well aware of the terrible and dark deeds perpetrated within its walls. Its original name was the King's Castle of Wicklow. The nearby village of Rathnew was occupied by the Danes, it is said, and recorded, but no evidence exists of a permanent settlement. 19th century local residents used to refer to several spots which were occupied by what was termed Danish forts. There was a strong oral tradition that the Danes possessed the countryside around them, and there was reference made to a Danes road which is said to have been broken up and ploughed under. What were called broken and indistinct vestiges of ancient fortifications existed in the 19th century to the west and south sides of the village. Such folklore and oral tradition may have been passed down through the centuries, but no actual physical evidence exists or has yet been found which would provide solid proof of a Rathnew Scandinavian connection.